How we doing? Okay. Good.
Was everyone able to practice fully today?
Yeah. So everybody, Yuki was back in. He fully practiced. Obviously, Kobe's still out. Patrick left practice. I don't think it's too serious. Haven't really checked with them, but just kind of a look like an ankle sprain.
What about Kobe? I know he's obviously like limited right now, but like, what kind of stuff is he doing, and what kind of timeline?
Well, I think that leading up to training camp, with his calf, I think it's the case. I think with a lot of these kind of injuries, when you deal with soft tissue injury, you start to ramp them up, and then obviously when they start to feel, I don't even say with Kobe it was discomfort as much as it was tightness. They kind of pull back, and then I think when they do that a couple times, and maybe the tightness is still there, what ends up happening is, okay, listen, let's shut this down. So he does do some shooting on the court. He is riding the bike. He's doing everything he can do to keep himself in shape. He's obviously, I appreciate his involvement in practice and trying to be uplifting to the guys while he's out there. But that's really all he's doing, and I mean, he's doing everything he can do within the framework of giving his calf enough time to, recover.
Like early on in the season, you probably want to like let it totally calm down so that it's not a lingering big drop.
That was the biggest thing right there. Is exactly how that was. It was just like, okay, this eagerness to start camp, and then all of a sudden he's got that, and then it puts him another week, and then you're putting it behind. He'd been dealing with this in the summer, and it was like, you know what? Like, we're trying to ramp him up to get him ready for camp, and he's still feeling some tightness there, and we need to get it to the point where he gets past the tightness. So let's just shut this down to make sure we are past it, and then he can kind of start back up with activities. But that was exactly the big thing. It's like, you don't want to start to get into 3 or 4 preseason games, and then you got to shut them down for 2 weeks going into the regular season. So I think there was an overabundance of caution, and I don't say that in any negative way. I think it was a smart move to make sure he's out of the woods and he's healthy once he does get back to playing.
Going back to Patrick, did you see what happened? Did he roll his ankle?
I was down at the other end. It looked like he kind of came, like he was going up for a layup, and he tried to, I don't want to say jump stop, but he planted, and you could just see he tweaked his ankle, kind of went over on it. I don't know if it was the right or the left. I'm not really sure.
Was during a scrimmage? Or
playing 5-on-5.
Okay.
Yep. He didn't come down on anybody's foot. He actually stopped, and I think his momentum, his foot got planted, and his foot rolled over.
Was he carried off? Did he go off?
No. He walked off the court. Yeah, he walked off. He was not carried off.
Not amputated or anything like that?
No, it's okay. It was none of that. But it wasn't one of those where he kind of came down, landed on the guy's foot, and twisted it. It was more coming to a stop, like his sneaker got stuck and it rolled.
I want to ask you, too, about Trey Jones, because it was pretty clear how quickly he earned your trust last season when he came here. But he was in a high-usage role last year because of where you guys were at in the season and Zach trade and injuries. Can you envision him in a successful backup role moving into this season, and how pleased were you that they re-signed him?
Yeah, I was very, very happy that we did that. I think there's a lot of substance to Trey. I mentioned, the it factor. There's a lot of intangible things that he just brings to the table. He's consistent every day as a person. He's a really good competitor. He's got a really high IQ. I think he's really good with the guys. He sees the game, through a leadership point guard role in terms of trying to make people better. Listen, I think that you always go back when that happened during the year, and you look at the minutes and you say, in some way that the minutes create, what ended up happening to his foot. I don't know if it did or it didn't. It's hard to say, but you have to at least take into consideration the fact that he went from playing a certain amount of minutes in San Antonio to a pretty big spike for us, right? So, had that maybe contributed? Possibly, but I think his role is going to be important. And the thing that's great with him is whether it's starting, coming off the bench, whatever he's always tries to figure out ways to impact the game.
What did you like about how Josh and Kobe played together last season, and what do you feel like they need to improve about that partnership this year?
I felt like as the season went on, and I think it was hard for Josh, again, you talk about a player coming from an entirely different country, and I know he was in Oklahoma City and he'd been in America, but from that to an entirely different team, and you're always, Josh's greatest strength, and he's got a lot of great strengths, but one of his strengths is he's really good passer, and I think in that position, it takes a while to get to know guys. The thing that I felt really good about Kobe and Josh was the relational piece, to watch that grow. I know they always had a really good relationship off the court, but I think on the court, their constant communication, talking to one another, I thought that was really, really positive and helpful. And especially after, the Zach trade, once Zach had kind of uh, was, after the All-Star break, wasn't on our team anymore, I think those two guys, at least their pairings, were maybe a little bit different than it was pre, trade deadline All-Star break. And I think that relationship on the court just continued to evolve.
Kobe said that he's been working in the offseason on being a little bit more off ball. Is that kind of just the expectation of where kind of that dynamic is going to fall, of Kobe shifting back to being a little bit more of that two guard?
It's Kobe is obviously very, very dynamic with the ball, and we need him with the ball, and we need him doing that. The other part of his growth and development, I think he realized this, there are opportunities for him to make the game easy for himself by running and getting into open windows, open situations, to create closeouts where he's got defenders kind of closing to him rather than defenders on him. And I think for probably somebody like Kobe, as you look at your career and evaluate your career, and you come into the league and you're kind of a point guard and you're playing off the ball, on the ball, and you're with this combo guard, I think you just envision yourself, okay, I'm going to play with the ball in my hands. And I think as he's gotten better, he's become a different priority for teams around the league in terms of trying to stop him. And I think the other part for him is, for his development for our team, his movement off the ball is something that's important. It's not necessarily about, hey, let's move him off the ball, as much as when he's off the ball, he's got to generate and create opportunities for himself without quote-unquote play calling. Like maybe running to the corner or getting out in transition, getting up the floor. And I get it. Like there's times, he may be a little bit tired and it's like, you know what, I'm going to take this one off. Or, hey, guy's driving, he's watching, if he can move into an open gap or area, it would create a closeout or a catch and shoot or an opportunity to maybe not play against a loaded, shifted defense. So I think it's something that, when I've talked to him the last 2 years, that he's kind of put a focus on, but I think he even sees it himself that he's wanted to work and get better in those areas.
He basically just can't be like waiting for the ball to be back in
Or the
his
ball in
hands.
his hands the whole entire time, you know what I mean? Because, when the ball's in your hands the whole entire time, the defense is going to play the ball. So, if I see Okoro has it, or Vooch has it, or, Modest has got it, and there's some kind of penetration or drive, or there's some kind of play that they're making, the defense is going to rotate to that. There are opportunities on the perimeter to move into areas of the floor where that ball may find you, and now you're playing in a game that becomes a little bit easier. It's not to say we don't want Kobe with the ball in his hands. I definitely do. But there's other ways for him to inject himself into the game when the ball's not in his hands, and he can find a way to get to smoke. I always say that part of the game is it's like running in transition. I'm running, but I'm not getting it. Well, you may have to run 20 times to get it twice. You know what I mean? Kobe, I'm not getting it. Well, you may have to keep doing that 20 times, right? It's just that, and I think Kobe's got that mentality because he's always been a worker, and I think part of his growth as a player, and I've said this before, he deserves all the credit. He always takes time to evaluate where he needs to get better, and I think that's another step for him that was going to help him and help our team.
Building off of that, given how dynamic he is with the ball in his hands, do you see kind of a path where you could potentially stagger Josh and Kobe, or do you see the path to victory as we want these two guys playing at the same time, Kobe mostly off ball and Josh, handling the facilitating?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at it from both lenses. I love those two guys on the floor together. They've been great. But the other thing, too, is sometimes, when you have guys coming in off the bench, it's a way to shore up the unit and you stagger them. So maybe it's they're starting games, closing first or second quarters, closing games. But, there's a lot of room in between the game where if they can show and create support for other guys. I don't want to say that all their minutes are only going to be together. I think there's opportunities where they won't always be together, and that's not a bad thing either. You're just trying to build up the team and utilize those rotations as best you can.
Really, I'm not sure you heard on Monday, but he was saying that he's asked the staff to sort of treat him like an all defensive guy, like he wants that treatment. What does that look like to you guys as a staff, and how do you sort of balance like knowing he's in the second year but wanting to treat him like a player that counts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing with Modest for me is I think he really wants to be pushed and challenged. He's always been that way. I think it's a really good thing. I've said this before. I've been around younger players when they make a mistake, they feel like the end of the world. They feel like they're letting everybody down. He's got a really, really good ability to kind of quickly course correct and try to learn from it and move forward. Listen, he's got a lot of areas he's got to get better in, and I don't say that in a way that that he's disappointed in, but because he's probably exceeded expectations the way the year started for him last year and where he ended up. But like he said, which he wants to do, he's got to get better defensively. He's got to get better offensively. There's a lot of room and growth because I said, I think on Monday I said this. He's going to see a difference this year in relationship to the level of players that he's going to be guarded, that he's got to guard, and that who's going to be guarding him. And I think in a lot of ways, that first half of the year probably wasn't a well-known commodity in the league. And by the end of the year, he was a well-known commodity. And he's going to be a different guy on the scouting report now than he had been in the past. But that's kind of part of his growth and development. He needs that. He wants that. He'll lean into that. And I respect that he wants that. Like, he wants to be a great defender. He wants to be a great offensive player. He's got to drive to do those things. So, like I said, he's got a lot of things to get better at, but he wants to get better at those things, and he wants to be challenged and pushed on those things, which I have great respect and admiration for, because I don't think Modest has ever taken the easy way out. He's always taken the tougher road, and I give him credit for putting himself out there of who he wants to be as a player.
And so what does that sort of change as far as what you guys are doing as a staff? Because you made it sound like he's almost demanding to be coached that way. Like, how has that changed with you guys?
Yeah, I don't know if I really have had conversations with him necessarily about the defensive part as much as keep pushing me, keep coaching, keep pushing. That's kind of what I've done with him, and probably, he got a pretty good taste of that early in the year last year when he had pretty much a very short, opportunity where if he wasn't doing the things he said he wanted to be held to, he was off the floor and he sat on the bench. And I do think that for him, that helped him see what are the things I do have to do to, get to be the player I want to become. So I don't sense anything this year has changed from what he said to me last year coming in as a rookie of what he wanted. Like nothing has really changed from my perspective. He's always wanted that, from I think everybody.
What's the impression about Yuki?
Yeah, I mean, Yuki's got a great feel of how to play. He's a very, very smart player. It's pretty amazing the impact he can make, at his size. I love the fact that he can pick up full court and pressure the ball the way he does. He's a very, very good three-point shooter. He's a very, very good passer. Obviously, he's got an experience with Memphis of being in the league, but just with the way he plays the game, his spirit, who he is as a guy, you always root for people like that.
Thanks.
I don't know if I answered that or not.
You did. Okay. All right.